It was funny, when I was preparing the sermon and Paul was looking at, she proofreads all my stuff. She said, "Where is Obadiah?" That's what we're going to be looking at. It is minute. Listen, I can tell you that 99% of people aren't going to know where Obadiah is located in between, tucked in between. Okay? So you may have to find it somewhere in your Bible. I think, Lori, don't you have the one that has all the books separated out? Yeah. I thought I remembered. See, I remembered. She has the ones. How many of you have that Bible that all of the different books are written in the end of the thing so you can find it really easy? Yeah, those are nice, huh? Well, this one you have to look hard because there are only 21 verses, I think, in this whole book. Is that right? It's short. And he is a minor prophet, you can tell, because he didn't get a lot to talk about, right? He is so minor that we have no idea who he is. Nothing. We don't know anything about him, not his family, not his upbringing, not what he did before. Like with the last minor prophet we looked at, he was a fig picker and he was a shepherd and some other things, but this guy we know nothing about. But isn't it amazing how God will pick out just somebody. And you'd say, well, there's no way. And here's this guy that's a complete unknown. He was not a practicing prophet, obviously, because we don't have anything else from him. But here he is. God gave him a vision. And he's going to relay that vision to us. Obadiah really 1 through 4 because there's only the one. So it says the vision of Obadiah. It doesn't say the dream. It says vision. The vision of Obadiah. This is what the sovereign Lord. You see how it says in all caps? Does it say all in caps in yours? How many of you, your Bibles, if you're looking at it, says all caps, Lord? That usually means God's name. Okay? And so, sovereign Jehovah says about Edom, we have heard a message from the Lord. An envoy was sent to the nations to say, rise, let us go up against her for battle. See, I will make you small among the nations. You will be utterly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rocks, and make your home on the heights. You who say to yourself, who can bring me down to the ground? Though you soar like the eagle and make your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. There are 3 questions that we're going to look at. I always like to anticipate questions. Usually when you're putting together a sermon, they always tell you, try to think about what your audience is going to ask. Right? And then of course if you're giving a speech or something like that, they always say don't ask questions that you don't know the answers to. So that's pretty good advice. So here, there's 3 questions that we want to look at. First, who is Edom? And the second question we'll look at is, where is Edom? And then finally, why is God so angry with him? And I'm going to tell a little story here. But this story about Edom actually starts generations before. It begins with a pair of twins born to Isaac and Rebekah named Jacob and Esau. You see, most of us know that story pretty well, right? That Jacob stole Esau's birthright. First, he stole the birthright because Esau was hungry. He had come in from the wilds, and he obviously hadn't caught anything or or if he hadn't caught anything, it wasn't ready yet. But whatever the case, he was starving. And he was a man that was, we were reading this morning in our Sunday school class about don't be concerned about what you eat or what you wear. He was a man that was very concerned about what was going on right now. I'm hungry. How do I fix this? And so he agreed to sell his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. I'm going to tell you that was a better deal than what even we got from the Indians for New York. I don't know if you remember that. We got the steak for something like a couple of beads and stuff like that. It was terrible what we gave him. But this is the same. It's horrible. He sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. And when he gave it away, have you ever done something really stupid? I do. She'll tell you I've done it several times. Some stupid stuff. But have you ever done something stupid and it was with someone else? And one or the other of you actually just gets really frustrated about it and begins to develop an animosity. That's what happened here. See, Esau never forgave Jacob. And then, of course, Jacob compounded that by stealing the blessings from his father Jacob through that subterfuge and everything else, and his mom helped. Thank you so much, Mom. But, so he stole all this from Esau, and it scared Jacob so much that when he was actually coming back home, he tried to send him a bunch of gifts and stuff like that. So Esau, I called it like a temporary reprieve. Although Esau hugged his brother and all this kind of stuff, the actual forgiveness didn't happen. It festered inside of him. And it became greater even than he was. And so he harbored hatred for his brother for the rest of his life. And not only did Esau keep that grudge throughout his own life, before I say that, have any of you ever seen it in a family where maybe one brother gets mad at another brother? And then all of a sudden, their kids won't hang out with their kids. It just kind of goes down the line. Have anybody seen that? That's the way this was. Esau hated Jacob. And so he knew God had kind of put some reins on him, and he knew that he couldn't harm Jacob. But what he did was he held this grudge throughout his own life, and he instilled it into the hearts and minds of his entire clan. Down throughout their generations. Have you ever heard where the Bible says, and God punishes the sins of the father to the second and third generation? The reason is because they passed it down. See what I mean? That it's not just that the father sinned and I'm gonna hold his son accountable for that. No, that's not what God is saying. It's unfortunate that our kids pick up, prejudice. Unless you get a handle on that, when you're raised that way, even if you know it's wrong, you can see it come out sometimes. I was really happy that although I knew that my mom and dad were prejudiced, because they've been brought up that way, they brought me up not to be. It takes active thought to do that, to break that chain. It doesn't happen just by accident. See, here Esau hated his brother, and so it almost seemed purposely passed this down from one generation to the next to the next. And as these generations get big. Remember, he had at least 4 wives that we know of. 2 were Canaanite, so he's bonded himself to Canaanite women, and 2 were from his cousins, and so at least 4. That means that he had tons of kids just like Jacob did. And they've got this big clan, but all of them hated Jacob and his family. It was the Hatfields and McCoys. For those of us that are old enough to remember who that was. Let's move to his descendants never forgot what Jacob did to him. We're going to go to Numbers chapter 20. This is many generations down the line. This is after the Israelites have come out of the land of Egypt, and they're going along, and Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the adversity that has befallen us, how our ancestors went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt a long time, and then the Egyptians oppressed us and our ancestors. And when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. And here we are in Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. Now, let us pass through your land. We will not pass through vine, field, or vineyard, or drink water from any well. We will go along the king's highway, not turning aside to the right hand or to the left, until we have passed through their territory. But the king of Edom said to him, you shall not pass through, or we will come out with a sword against you. The Israelites said to him, we'll stay on the main highway. And if we drink of your water, we and our livestock, then we will pay for it. It's only a small matter. Just let us pass through on foot. But the king of Edom said, you shall not pass through. And he came out against them with a large force, heavily armed. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through their territory. So Israel turned another way from them. Esau's other name was Edom. So when Moses said, your brother Israel, well, God had renamed Jacob Israel. And Esau went by Edom. So when Moses said that, he was being literal. Your brother Jacob, or your brother's family, Jacob, Israel. And in their time of need, Esau's offspring turned Israel away. So now you know who Edom is. We've answered one of our questions. Now that last passage actually occurred just after Moses had struck the rock. I don't know if you remember this, but Moses, at one place, God told him to strike the rock and water will come out of it. So he did that. Well, at the next place, Moses was a little irritable. And I know this has never happened to anyone here, but when your kids gripe and gripe and gripe and gripe and gripe at you, you can get a little irritated. Nobody's ever had that happen. Right, Chris? No. Yeah. They're just nagging, and they have been doing that. And it's just, And so God told him, speak to the rock, and water will come forth. And Moses took out a staff and whacked the rock out of anger. And Moses didn't go into the land of Canaan because of that. God said, speak to it. And he whacked it out of anger. But that happened. They called it Meribah because it had been bitter water. And so that happened just outside here. And just outside the city of Petra. Isn't that amazing looking? That is carved into the very rock. Anybody recognize this? How many have seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? Yeah, that's it. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That's where they go in. Right there. Petra, meaning rock. This is one of the main towns in Edom. The Edomites made this place and others other places because they were all in the mountains, impregnable. And Crystal, I don't know if you've been out that way, but when I used to live outside of Gallup, the hills look very similar to this. And you would see caves. And that was just caves. And wow, what a safe place to have your camp. Right? But here, they built entire cities into the rock. And then up on top of rocks. And so they believed themselves to be undefeatable. And for quite a while, they were right. And what they would do is, Israel was supposed to clear out the land of Canaan when they came in. But the Edomites, what they would do is, when the Israelites were around, they would come down out of their mountain and they would attack a smaller village and stuff and take slaves and different things and just run back to their encampment. And God had told them, don't take their area, because he was going to give that to the descendants of Lot. Remember Abraham's nephew. And so they weren't supposed to take it. And so they were left up there by themselves, and so they would come down and they would harass Israel. Other times they would come down and they would trade with Israel. But they would make terrible trades where Israel was giving up a lot and not getting anything back. They were a constant thorn in the side of Israel because they hated them. They hated the Israelites with this passion. For me, I'm not a grudge kind of guy. And so I don't get how you can be that. We're descendants and descendants and descendants are just that focused on hating another group. To me, someone that used to be their brothers, that to me is odd. But they did. And every time that Israel was defeated in a battle, Edom would throw a party. And they gloried in the pain of their brother Israel, all the while believing themselves to be undefeatable. And now God is telling them that their time is coming to an end, all because of pride and vengeance. See, they had allowed this grudge, this thing that occurred to their ancestor, to fester like a wound that isn't ever given a chance to heal. And it gets worse and worse until it becomes gangrene and it'll kill you, right? And here this has happened to a whole people group. They held on to this grudge for generation after generation. See, holding on to a grudge rather than forgiving has devastating effects. And God's Word warns us time and time again not to do that. Not to hold on to it, but to let it go and forgive. In fact, right at the end of what we call the Lord's Prayer, it says, if you forgive others, God will forgive you. But if you don't, God will not forgive you either. Another thing that we're warned time and time again against is finding joy from someone else's misfortunes. Solomon wrote this, do not rejoice when your enemies fall, and do not let your heart be glad when they stumble, or else the Lord will see it and be displeased and turn away his anger from them. And what he really means there is turn away his anger from them and bring it back to you. Because you got a bad attitude. Did you know that bad attitudes are what kept the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Out of the land of Canaan, out of the promised land. Bad attitudes. My dad always said it was murmuring and complaining. That's a bad attitude. That's basically a hopeless, pessimistic attitude. Every time something gets wrong, you whine and complain about it. Right? Bad attitudes. I think I was talking about it with someone a couple weeks ago. Maybe Cindy, maybe you were telling me about something in Callan's class, but I told them in Stevie's, I remember in Stevie's Eagle's Nest kindergarten thing, they sang a song, "Are you humbly grateful or are you grumbly hateful?" And that just stuck with me. Do you have a good attitude? Are you one that when you walk into a room, people say, "Oh, so-and-so is here"? There are some of you that when you come into the room, my whole outlook just brightens because I knew that you're here. I love to see Carrie. He's sick again, so you need to keep your prayer for him, but I love to see his smile sitting there. See, that's a good attitude. Or maybe you're someone, I hope not. You know anybody when they come into a room and the lights go out? Don't ask them how they're doing. Just don't ask. It just, we all know people like that, right? We don't want to admit it, but we do. Maybe someone says, well, I am one of those. Hopefully not, because listen, people don't like to be around you. And there's a reason. Did you know that I really think that bad stuff occurs more often because you've got a bad attitude? It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy thing. You make poor choices because you got a bad attitude. When I was putting this together, I was thinking about the sins of Edom. They gloated over Israel's pain when they were attacked and taken as prisoner to Babylon, all those things. They gloated over it. Woohoo! Look what happened to them. See, Jacob did that. God's getting back at it. That's great. That's what they were saying all the time. But God heard that. See, gloating, when I was putting this together, I was thinking about how many sins are actually interconnected. That gloating is a type of pride, isn't it? Ooh, I'm better than they are. Look at this. God put them down, and we're sitting up here in this high mountain. Got the best life. That's just wrong. It's pride. And God told us in that first passage that we read in Obadiah that you had that attitude that nobody can touch me, that I'm better than everybody else, and all this kind of stuff. And he said, your time is coming. Do you know how many Edomites are left on the planet? 0. 0. There are no Edomites. God annihilated them. They're gone. Because they had this pride. Obadiah calls it your prideful heart. But while gloating is a form of pride, isn't vengeance also a form of pride? Think about it. God says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And I was reminded of that thing, I don't get mad, I just get even. Right? Everybody's heard it. But see, if vengeance is God's, but you're seeking to exact it yourself, then you are taking God's place. You are taking what is God's and making it your own. Listen, it makes for good movies, it makes for a terrible life. There's tons of movies about people taking vengeance out on, right? All sorts of different ones. But makes for a great movie, makes for a terrible life. We can see that in Edom. If you live your life to get even, you are never ever going to be able to have a good attitude. Because you got some stuff festering in there. And I'm going to give you a visual here to tell you how bad that is. If you're unwilling to forgive and you're holding on to grudge, it's like, I remember watching, I guess it's based on a true story, this young woman, I think they were missionaries or something, but they got caught, they got crashed or something like that, and they were in the Amazon jungle. And she was something like 20 days in the Amazon jungle, stumbling around. When she finally got out, she was covered in these bumps. They were flies that had bit her and laid eggs inside. And when you poke them, these worms would come out. And they would pull out these big, long worms. That's what's going on in your heart when you hold on to grudges. It festers. And it becomes out of control. And I know Paul will get onto me for that visual, but I got to tell you, it's important that you understand how terrible it is to not forgive. It is horrific. And it's horrific in your life. It may be that the person that did it doesn't even know that you're still mad at them. They've gone on about their business. And they're happy. And you're sitting there still having a connection about something that happened before. Don't let that happen to you. Pride and vengeance, they're terrible things. And they're so terrible that God annihilated a whole people group because they lived in it. You know, it's different to have, this is what I try to tell people, it's different to fall because you sinned and you realized it was a sin and you confessed it, you got right, you repented, and now you're going your way. It's different to do that than it is to live in your sin. When you live in it, and I don't care what kind of a sin it is, when you live in it, you are unrepentant. And this whole plan was living in pride and vengeance. They had built their cities on pride and on vengeance. Don't let that happen to you. If you have not forgiven somebody of something, you need to take care of it. Don't let pride stop you from anything. Listen, I've seen it where people are too proud to ask forgiveness for things that they've done because they don't want anybody else to know about it. Anybody heard of that? I've heard people that maybe have been thought to be Christians all of their lives, but they never had actually asked Jesus personally into their life.
harsh. And maybe they're the deacon in the church, and all of a sudden, you see some guy come down to the altar, and he said, I never really asked him myself. But there are plenty of other people who refuse to do that because, hey, wait a minute, other people would know that I've just been kind of faking it all this time. That'd be horrible. When we're more concerned about what other people think about us than getting right with God, that's a problem. Once again, pride. I love these minor prophets because they can say so much in so little. And so today I would just say, listen, if you have something against a brother or a sister, get it right. I've seen stuff like that tear up families. People that don't speak to each other for 20 or 30 years simply because they're too proud to make it right. Let's pray.